Despite an extensive knowledge of bomb disposal, Wing Commander Harrison's nerves of steel were really tested in the early part of the war in 1940. The events leading up to him receiving this award were pretty spectacular, weren't they?
Very much so. Obviously, with his expertise, he's one of the first men really in the country to go into frontline duty. But as a civilian, he worked alongside an RAF bomb disposal officer, but he was a civilian at that stage.
As bombs rained down, he was needed more and more for increasingly tricky operations.
The two most important ones were enacted on board ships, which came into port. One had an unexploded bomb between the decks, and the other one had an unexploded mine. It was a new type, he'd never seen it before. He worked on that for 4 hours, at the end of which he found that the firing pin had jammed, and had he just made one move, left, right, a little shudder, that would have been it.
Wing Commander Harrison was so knowledgeable about bomb disposal, he even wrote a guidebook for the government. It wasn't long before he was in active service.
His expertise was very much sought after, and he was commissioned into the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve. And by 1944, he's a wing commander in command of all RAF bomb disposal operations.
Just over 400 people have received the George Cross since its creation in 1940. It was made to recognise people who showed great bravery when facing danger in ordinary life, something Wing Commander Harrison did many times over.
I think, we all talk about gallantry per se, and there's so many forms of it, charging a machine gun nest. But I've always been struck by the coolness of bomb disposal work, just exceptional. And of course, we're reminded of that today in recent operations, that terribly gallant work with Afghanistan and IEDs.
His well-earned George Cross and other medals, including one for good conduct, go under the hammer at Dix Noonan Webb auctioneers in London on February the 24th. Chloe Culpin, Forces News.